This podcast is sponsored by Skylight Calendar. Let's be real. Running a household can be exhausting and chaotic. And finding the perfect Mother's Day gift, it's not exactly a no-brainer. Until now. The Skylight Calendar is the best way to organize the family and give everyone, especially mom, some peace of mind to enjoy the things that matter most. The Skylight Calendar is a smart, touchscreen calendar that keeps track of and manages the chores, dinner planning, groceries, and to-dos for the whole family. The Skylight Calendar automatically syncs each family member's digital calendars and displays them all together on one color-coded touchscreen. It even doubles as a digital picture frame, so you can finally share all those special moments that are just sitting on your phone. As a limited-time offer for our listeners, get 15% off your purchase of a Skylight Calendar when you go to skylightcal.com/easy. That's SKYLIGHTCAL.com/easy. Get 15% off your Mother's Day purchase now at skylightcal.com/easy.
Hi, everybody. Today, my mommy is going to talk about Richard M. Nixon.
Thank you, Noah, for introducing Richard M. Nixon, the 37th President of the United States. At the start of his second term in January of 1973, Richard Nixon was at the peak of his popularity, having won the election of 1972 by 18 million votes and an electoral college vote of 520 to 17. Only Massachusetts and Washington, D.C. voted for Nixon's challenger, Democrat George McGovern. Even George McGovern's home state of South Dakota voted in favor of Nixon. Less than 19 months after his astounding election victory, Nixon became the first and only president to resign. How did things go south so quickly? Let's find out. Richard Nixon was born in California in 1913. He attended a Quaker college where he majored in history. He then graduated from Duke University Law School in 1937 and returned to California to practice law. He met Thelma Ryan, who was often called Pat, which was a nickname given to her by her father, and they got married in June of 1940. When America got involved in World War II the following year, Nixon joined the U.S. Navy, where he earned the rank of lieutenant. Upon returning to the United States after the war, Republican officials from California encouraged Richard Nixon to run for the House of Representatives. Richard Nixon was a shrewd politician and was aware of the fear many Americans had of communism. He used that fear while campaigning for the House of Representatives and later the Senate by suggesting that his opponents were soft on communism. This proved to be an effective strategy that got Nixon elected to the House and then the Senate. While serving in Congress, Richard Nixon was part of the Un-American Activities Committee, which was responsible for investigating people that may be acting against the U.S. government.
This podcast is sponsored by Skylight Calendar. Let's be real. Running a household can be exhausting and chaotic. And finding the perfect Mother's Day gift, it's not exactly a no-brainer. Until now. The Skylight Calendar is the best way to organize the family and give everyone, especially mom, some peace of mind to enjoy the things that matter most. The Skylight Calendar is a smart, touchscreen calendar that keeps track of and manages the chores, dinner planning, groceries, and to-dos for the whole family. The Skylight Calendar automatically syncs each family member's digital calendars and displays them all together on one color-coded touchscreen. It even doubles as a digital picture frame, so you can finally share all those special moments that are just sitting on your phone. As a limited-time offer for our listeners, get 15% off your purchase of a Skylight Calendar when you go to skylightcal.com/easy. That's SKYLIGHTCAL.com/easy. Get 15% off your Mother's Day purchase now at skylightcal.com/easy.
Richard Nixon continued to rise to new heights and gain recognition for his efforts against communism. He was selected as Dwight D. Eisenhower's running mate and served as vice president for 8 years under Eisenhower. He used his tried and true strategy of painting Democratic presidential nominee Adlai Stevenson as being soft on communism to help Eisenhower get elected. Following his 8 years as vice president, Richard Nixon represented the top of the Republican ticket in the election of 1960, facing off against John F. Kennedy. Nixon was in control and seemed destined for the White House before the televised debates that took place just weeks before the election. The debates shifted control to John F. Kennedy, who defeated Nixon by a very small margin. He returned to California and tried to run for governor of California unsuccessfully in 1962. Nixon was disappointed after 2 consecutive defeats. His family moved to New York, where he went back to practicing law. While in New York, he was asked to campaign for other Republicans. While doing so, he gained recognition once again until he became a viable contender for president in 1968. He was able to edge out other potential Republican candidates like Ronald Reagan and Nelson Rockefeller to be nominated by the Republican Party. Richard Nixon and his running mate Spiro Agnew were able to narrowly defeat Hubert Humphrey in the election of 1968. President Nixon's first term was mostly successful. He supported the development of the Environmental Protection Agency, which is an agency responsible for ensuring environmental quality. This gave him credibility with liberals, as it wasn't an opinion shared by many other Republicans. With that lone exception, his administration supported conservative policies. President Nixon made 2 historic trips in 1972 to the People's Republic of China and the Soviet Union. Both countries were under communist rule, so a visit from a vocal anti-communist like Richard Nixon was intriguing. No significant contact was made between the United States and the People's Republic of China for more than 20 years before Nixon arrived, and the 2 countries signed a trade agreement. When he visited the Soviet Union, President Nixon successfully thawed the Cold War tensions between the 2 countries. Both countries signed a trade agreement and initiated a treaty designed to limit missile capabilities. The United States also agreed to allow the Soviets to buy an enormous amount of wheat to account for shortages in the Soviet Union. Nixon was able to destroy his competitor in the 1972 election due to his tremendous first term. In addition to creating much-needed diplomacy between the United States and 2 longtime enemies, Nixon helped steady the shaky economy and started scaling down the United States military presence in the very unpopular Vietnam War. Things quickly started to unravel for President Nixon due to the Watergate scandal. Watergate is the name of a building where the Democratic National Committee had its headquarters. In June of 1972, 5 men were caught stealing items from the DNC headquarters at Watergate. Trusted advisors of Richard Nixon started resigning as investigations closed in on President Nixon and his administration's role in the Watergate scandal. It was discovered that a committee created to re-elect President Nixon used more than $500,000 to pay the Watergate burglars. Although the investigation clearly showed participation of many people close to Nixon, it failed to show a direct link between President Nixon himself and Watergate. That was until a White House aide testified that Nixon recorded conversations in the White House so that historians would have a better understanding of the president's day-to-day activities. The court demanded that Nixon hand over the tapes, and he refused, insisting that there was information on the tapes that could compromise national security. In what proved to be a terrible decision, Nixon ordered that the Attorney General fire the special prosecutor that was demanding the tapes. Instead, the Attorney General resigned. This outraged the public and put even more pressure on Nixon to hand over the tapes. He finally gave in to the pressure and handed them over. When the tapes were examined, it was clear that there were conversations that were missing. One tape had an awkward 18-minute silence that resulted in more suspicion. The tapes were handed over to experts who determined that someone had erased portions of the tape. The 8 initial tapes that the court requested were soon followed up by an additional 42 tapes and then another 64 tapes. The content on the tapes proved that Nixon was trying his best not to cooperate with the investigation. At this point, efforts to impeach President Nixon and remove him from office were well underway. On August 5, 1974, tapes revealed that Nixon ordered the FBI to stop investigating the break-in at Watergate. Rather than face humiliation and certain impeachment, Richard Nixon resigned just 4 days later on August 9, 1974. His vice president at the time of resignation, Gerald Ford, became the next president. Join Olivia and her dad tomorrow when they get curious about bicycles. Until next time, stay curious.
NetCredit is here to say yes to a personal loan or line of credit when other lenders say no. Apply in minutes and get a decision as soon as the same day. Loans offered by NetCredit or lending partner banks and serviced by NetCredit. Application subject to review and approval. Learn more at netcredit.com/partners. NetCredit. Credit to the people.
Mike Rowe here with a radical idea. If you want to see more companies make more things in this country, buy more things from more companies who make things in this country. I refer in this case to the incredible t-shirts, sweatshirts, blue jeans, and more made by my friends at American Giant. Everything American Giant makes is made in the United States. And right now, you can take 20% off your first order at american-giant.com/Mike. That's american-giant.com/Mike.